Right, well, we were going to go to the old Stinky House and what happened there, but we now have established our link to the Prime Minister, who's been making a speech at Old Government House in Auckland. She's now hooked up and ready to talk to us. Helen Clark, you can hear me, I presume. Good evening.
I can, Paul, thank you.
Prime Minister, does the tape freak you?
Well, I haven't heard the tape, but I've obviously heard the reports of it. Osama bin Laden is a mass murderer by any standard. He authorised the appalling attacks of 11th September, and so when he makes direct threats again, you have to take those threats seriously.
Since the news of the tape came through to New Zealand today, have you had any communication from Washington, D.C., any communication from Canberra?
Well, I haven't personally because I've been on the move, but I understand that other countries like ourselves are saying that such a threat can't be lightly dismissed, and that, in my view, it justifies the decisions we've taken to continue our contribution to the international campaign against terrorism.
Let's get on to that shortly, but Australia is specifically threatened. Australia is specifically targeted and mentioned in the tape. If Australia is threatened, Prime Minister, is New Zealand threatened?
Paul, everybody is threatened by terrorist threats. Terrorists don't sit there in their hideaways in the hills, wherever they are, and draw up lists of the nationalities who are for or against Iraq or anything else. Terrorism strikes quite indiscriminately. 2 Kiwi citizens were killed on 11th September in the United States, and 3 people were killed in Bali. That's why the threat is a generic one against humanity.
It might seem indiscriminate to us, but of course to Al-Qaeda it is specifically targeted. Is our safety diminished further by the extra commitment of that frigate to the war on terrorism? Is our safety diminished by that?
No, certainly not. But we have made a commitment to carry on with that contribution to the international campaign. As long as bin Laden is at large, as long as he has a network, they will keep issuing threats like this.
You see, you've been drawing a distinction since the announcement about the frigate. You've been drawing a distinction between the war on terror, New Zealand's engagement in the war on terror, and any imminent war on Iraq. Do you think that Al-Qaeda is going to make that distinction?
No, of course it isn't. Al-Qaeda makes generic threats. It carries out those threats where it thinks it can hurt Western interests. As I say, they don't sit in a cave saying, oh, well, New Zealand's one way on this one and one way on another. What it does is strike where it thinks it will hurt. That's why it struck in New York and Washington, D.C. That's why it will strike in other places.
Indeed,
and the chances are Kiwis will be caught up.
Right, but the war on terror, Operation Enduring Freedom, the war on terror is a war on, not Iraq specifically, but on Osama bin Laden specifically.
Correct.
It's a war on Al-Qaeda.
And it's a war we've been engaged in since the post-September 11th period.
And you've just upped our competition, not our competition, our contribution.
Well, we're extending the contribution. We've had the SAS there, but as I've said, we have a small SAS and we can't rotate indefinitely. So the government's been considering for some time how we might continue the contribution.
Right, but you have increased the competition. The question, therefore, is, in increasing our contribution and likely drawing extra attention to ourselves, has our risk increased? Has our safety diminished?
It hasn't increased over what it has been ever since September 11th and the fact that our citizens were caught up in those events.
Spell it out for us if you would, Prime Minister. Why do we need to send a frigate and an aircraft? Why do we need troops in Afghanistan? Why are we committing in this manner?
Why? Because on September 11th, transnational terrorists through that network showed a capacity to strike against humanity in a way which shocked the entire world. The United Nations Security Council got mobilised, resolutions were passed, nations took a range of actions, including making military commitments. We made that commitment from the beginning. We are continuing it, albeit with different arms of our forces. It is going to run for quite a long time.
And just very quickly, if Saddam Hussein does not agree to those to that Security Council resolution by Friday, does New Zealand support a strike on Iraq?
What New Zealand supports is the process clearly set out in the UN Security Council resolution, laboriously negotiated over about a 2-month period. There is until Friday to comply. If he doesn't comply, then it comes back to the United Nations Security Council for further discussion.
Prime Minister Helen Clark, I thank you very much for your time. Still on the programme, I rather imagine this. You are bathing baby in the bedroom, and then all of a sudden you hear a deep rumbling noise, bizarre sort of a noise, and it's coming from down the hallway. It's not Aunt Bessie coming up the hallway. There's a noise down the hallway, and it's coming from the toilet. And the smell, in fact, hits you before you see the disaster. And this is a disaster that's left the Bennett family of Waitakere City afraid to return to their home. They don't want to live there anymore, and they want Waitakere City Council to buy their house. And this from Helen Clark.
For the past 4 years, Carla and Andrew Bennett have made this their home, their first home. Now they want to leave.
Every time I come home to our house, I feel absolutely sick in the stomach thinking about what's happened, and I don't want to ever live here again.
That was 6 weeks ago when they were forced to evacuate their home. Their lives changed forever when the unthinkable happened.
I was bathing Zach in this bedroom, in his little baby's bath, which was against the wall, and I noticed a brown, sludgy fluid coming out from under the toilet, and it was starting to go straight down the carpet, down the hallway. I came down the hallway and opened the toilet door, as to which stage I saw raw sewage flooding out of the toilet like a volcano out onto the carpet. Within about 10 seconds, it had flooded completely the toilet, and it was starting to travel right down the hallway.
And was it toilet paper, just toilet paper? And
it was toilet paper, it was whole poos, it was tampons, condoms, everything that goes down there was coming up.
The raw sewage quickly spread through the rest of the house, pouring out over the front door and down the steps.
My dad was here and we got buckets and we were bucketing it out for half an hour, just like pouring it out through the deck for half an hour. But the flow was so strong that we just had to give up.
It smelt revolting. It smelt like somebody had died. It was repulsive.
Outside, the scene was just as bad.
Well, about 4 boards up where the boards meet the floor, the raw sewage was like pouring out all the way along that wall and all the way
cascading down, was it?
Yeah, it was raining. It was literally raining down for a whole hour.
What'd you think?
I was horrified.
Did you think it was going to stop?
No. Just imagine what I was doing to the house. Just soaking the house.
It even came through the floor, soaking their stored belongings below. In their moment of panic, they called the Waitakere City Council for help.
One did arrive, and it was 3/4 of an hour later, and he didn't have the right map of any of the manholes.
For 2 hours, the sewage flowed freely through the house.
And I got to a point of desperation. I come out, and these guys weren't taking any notice of what was going on. I said, man, there must be something you can do to stop my house getting wrecked. And we looked around, and eventually we found that we could just take that lid off, and then it poured out here for another whole hour right under the stairs and filled up a reservoir underneath the driveway, and it was all pouring out through the cracks in the driveway as well.
So it's contaminated not only the inside but the outside?
That's right, yeah. A council manager did arrive. He's the manager of Eco Water, Tony McGuell, and when he arrived he said that the council would see us right at the buck stops with him.
And this is where the source of the problem lies, beneath the deck, under the house, a council sewer.
Yep. This is where the blockage occurred. A big hunk of concrete had obviously come down the system and lodged itself in a pipe just down here.
How big was the block of concrete? Can you show me?
They said it was about 300 wide, which is like that.
Today, the house is a bare shell, still under repair. Carpets and drapes are gone, damaged wall boards replaced, and swollen floors sanded back. Insurance is covering a lot of their current needs, like a fully furnished rented house to live in and homes for their pets. Add to that a claim for damaged goods.
Possession-wise, we lost clothing, we lost wedding presents, etc. that we had in storage under the house. We lost boogie boards,
Furniture, beds.
furniture, all our furniture, beds,
Toys.
snorkeling, diving gear. Anything that was porous or that could absorb it, we had to throw out, obviously. And things that we could save, we did our very best on the night to save.
$41,000 worth, in fact, including new carpet and drapes. So Carla and Andrew wrote to the Waitakere City Council, claiming compensation for the contamination to their home.
At this stage, they have paid our medical bills. Andrew and I have been exposed to hepatitis, have had to have shots, hepatitis shots, and my father-in-law also. They also have said that they would pay for the microbiologist fees that we employed her. Whether they have done that or not yet, I'm not sure.
But Carla and Andrew say they still haven't received a proper apology and want further compensation. So today, Holmes went to Bob Harvey at the Waitakere City Council.
I'm not going to admit liability, but I will apologise to them. I think it's a dreadful and awful thing that's happened to them.
I'd like them to buy the property and the house and compensate us fairly for our stresses.
For exposing you
For
to disease.
exposing us to disease and emotionally for what we've been through.
They want us to pay, I guess, a large piece of compensation. They want us to buy their house. I don't think both those things are compatible as far as I can see, but certainly one is.
So the question remains, should the Bennetts move back in? Is their home safe to live in?
After 3 reports from a microbiologist, they say that the house has been sufficiently sanitised and that the contamination has been effectively eradicated. They do say, though, that there are traces of contamination in the particle board, and while it's not dangerous, it should disappear over time.
But that's not good enough for the Bennetts.
In future, we don't want to live here at all. We don't want to come back. And I don't want to bring up Zach in this house and let him play outside. I don't want to be here.
Indeed, you can't expect anybody to live there. And of course, you couldn't have expected anybody to reuse the snorkel gear, could you? Now, Bob Harvey, the Mayor of Waitakere City, says he will visit Mr. and Mrs. Bennett tomorrow. He says he's not offering any compensation. He says he will help them sell the house through the council's property company. He says the council will cover any conveyancing and legal fees. In the meantime, Carla and Andrew, the Bennetts, they say they're looking forward to meeting the Mayor, but they're not going to back down on demands for some kind of compensation for the foul, vile horror they had to endure from the council pipes. Still to come on the program, Saving the Kiwi. The campaign continues. A Waikato farmer carves off and creates an island on his land to help save the species. How's he doing?
They've got a shot at life and probably will have something like a 95% survival rate compared to the 5% survival rate they have as they emerge from the egg in the wild at the present time without any pest and predator control.